Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for Trish and CW for inviting me. It was always a pleasure. Some people in the room may not. My full-time job now is I'm a trade union tutor, so I've been here a few times and I've taught a number of people who are sitting in the room as well. But this is about blacklisting. And to start off with, I'd like to say this. I like to talk to trade unionists because when I talk about blacklisting, they understand what I'm talking about. There's not a trade union activist in the country who doesn't realise that if you raise concerns with management about people being bullied, if you raise concerns about cuts in terms and conditions, and sometimes it affects your career prospects. And you know, we all know as people, as reps who've been victimised for their trade union activities, who haven't got promotion, who've been allocated the worst work, and of course in some examples we know people who've been dismissed, unfairly dismissed for their trade union activities. And when trade unions talk about blacklisting, that sometimes even when we've been sacked from a job for our trade union activities, we find it difficult to get jobs elsewhere. Whenever we say that to people, certainly whenever we say it to politicians, or whenever we say it to the press, we're accused of being conspiracy theorists. That this is a complete conspiracy theory, that we're paranoid, and that this stuff doesn't really go on. Well, you know, I've had to put up with that for many years, and in the building industry we've had to put up with that for many years, except we can now prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that blacklisting was going on in the construction industry. Blacklisting the trade unions was going on in the construction industry. Because in 2008, a journalist for The Guardian, his name was Phil Chamberlain, wrote an article in The Guardian about blacklisting in the building industry. And the article was put on the table of a manager at the Information Commissioner's Office. His name was David Clancy. Before he worked for the ICO, he was a copper for 8 years for Greater Manchester Police. And he was the head of investigations. And he spent the next 12 months trying to get warrants and finding out where this information was being held. And finally, in March 2009, they did a raid on a small organisation in the Midlands called the Consulting Association. And when they got in through the front door, they found secret files that were being kept on 3,213 trade unionists in the construction industry. And because the ICO is a government department, if you think your name is on this list, you can apply to the ICO, and under Freedom of Information, they will give you a copy of your own file. This is my blacklist file that the construction industry kept on me. It's 36 pages long. It's got my name, address, national insurance number. It's got the car registration I was driving. It's got my home telephone number. It's got my mobile phone number. It's got photographs of me. It's got every job I worked on for 10 years. When I was elected as a union safety rep, the company, instead of giving me legal rights to inspect the workplace, they sacked me and then photocopied my union safety rep's credentials and sent that off to be added to my blacklist file. People were being blacklisted just for being elected as union safety reps. There's information on there about my wife, there's information on there about my brother, there's one bit on there I'm particularly offended by, which was sent up by some manager. This is the bit. It says, Dave Smith described as talking like a young Alf Garnett, which of course, more than anything, is what I'm offended by. And you know, the point is that if someone was just keeping files on you, well, to be honest, it's not the end of the earth. It's a bit sad, but if someone was just keeping files on you, well, you know, what's the big deal? Well, the reason they were keeping files is because every time anyone applied to get a job on any of the big major construction sites, they used to check to see if your name was on this list. And when I first started working in the building industry, and some of the old boys that I met in the union meetings used to talk to me about blacklisting, if I'm honest, I was sceptical. Because I never worked for a big construction firm. Everyone in the building industry has been casualised. We all work for employment agencies or small little subcontractors. And some of the companies I was working for, the people didn't have an office. You know, the governor used to turn up on a Friday afternoon and pay the wages out the back of his Merc. You know, that's the way they operated. And in my eyes, I couldn't see the mechanism by which, you know, the fact that I was working for this small little subcontractor, how would he possibly know that 2 or 3 years ago on another building site, maybe 50 miles away, that I'd been a shop steward? How would they know that? So when all these files got found, well, we suddenly knew what was going on. Because they didn't just keep information on you. What happened was the big companies used to check to see if your name was on this list. And we know this because they found the invoices. Every time they checked to see if a name was on the list, they got charged £2 by this organisation, the Consultant Association. And in the last year that it was being in operation, was when they were building the Olympics. And the company that built the Olympic Stadium was Sir Robert McAlpine. That year, their invoice was £28,000. This is industrial scale blacklisting. It is not one, you know, HR manager having a quiet word with another HR manager, you know, over a pint. This is full-on industrial scale systematic blacklisting. The only companies that were involved in this weren't the small little subbies I was working for. The only companies who were involved in this are multinational construction companies. It's Balfour Beatty, it's Costos, it's Carillion, it's Skanskas, it's Kiers, it's Sir Robert McAlpine. So they're the biggest construction companies in the UK, in some cases the biggest construction companies in Europe. And when they found the invoices, they also found the constitution. This organisation had a constitution. They used to have meetings once every 3 months. You're only allowed to attend the meetings according to the constitution if you was at director level of these companies. So we've got directors of multinational companies meeting in secret and providing information about construction workers who dare to raise concerns about health and safety, or dare to raise concerns about unpaid wages. And they were sharing this information and stopping people getting work. I was sceptical about the mechanism, but when I was working in the building industry, I wasn't sceptical about blacklisting. It was obvious, absolutely obvious. In the middle of the building boom, as soon as I started being active in the union, I went from driving a massive, I'm an engineer in construction industry, I earn good money. I earn very good money, especially in the middle of the building boom in London. And when I started becoming active as a trade union health and safety rep, within 12 months, my money went down to £11,000 one year. I went from driving a massive 4x4 to driving a £300 Fiesta van that was about 15 years old and had very, very dubious paperwork. And, you know, I nearly lost my house. My kids were on milk tokens. I'm a qualified engineer in the middle of the building boom and I couldn't get a job. All of the employment agencies stopped ringing me overnight. I went for about 18 months doing this. I couldn't pay the mortgage, which is why I ended up getting a job doing trade union education training. I thank the trade union movement for saving me, saving my house. But there were plenty of people who weren't as lucky as me. There were plenty of people who've been out of work for years because of this. And when I first heard this, people telling me they're out of work for years, I didn't believe them. And then when you see their file, because these companies never ever thought they were going to get this stuff was going to be found, they're quite blatant about it. Applied for this job, found out who was sacked him, found out who was sacked him. Page after page of workers being sacked because, I don't know, 5 years previously they'd worked on the Jubilee line and they'd been involved in a strike or something like that. And most of the people who are on there because we've raised concerns about health and safety. In an industry that's got the highest fatality rate in the country, bar any other industry, for raising concerns about health and safety, that was what got you put on the building industry blacklist. Because for us, it was about saving people's lives. For the employers, it was about saving money. You know, they were only interested in protecting their profits, and if they got rid of us, then their profits would be increased. That's why they had to go at us. They didn't like me because I spoke like Alf Garnett. They didn't like me because I was there as a collective voice for workers in the industry. And if it was just the employers not liking me, then all right, to a certain extent I could put up with that. I'm a trade unionist, I'm not the only trade unionist in the country who's been victimised by their employers. But since this scandal was broken in 2009, more and more stuff's come out. And what we now know is that the police were intimately involved with the blacklisted trade unionists in the building industry. We know this because first of all from a whistleblower, and then later on from more and more documents that have been released. And people